Hello, everyone. Welcome to Social Media Sex and Shame. My name is Jenny Mohr, and I'm a sex and intimacy coach. I help individuals, couples, and groups to become erotically embodied, sexually self-aware, and improve relationships in all areas of their lives, with themselves, with others, noticing the relationship with social media, which we'll get into later. I'm also very inspired by Carl Jung and his work with shadow work, and I use BDSM as an integration tool to embrace and celebrate the shadows. So that's some of the juicy things I work on, as well as I'm a Tantra practitioner. So I'm a huge toolkit, largely based in sexuality, but really helping people to transform their lives. So that's a little bit about me. I'm so grateful to be here. I love lightning in a bottle. It's always been a dream of mine to be a contributor, not just be passive, but like I have so much I want to share to my beautiful festival community. So I'm so honored to be here. I need to just get through a few housekeeping things. The first of which is something I really need to tell you, which is for now and the rest of your life, you never have to do anything that you don't want to do. Forever. So anything that I say is purely a suggestion, but use your internal guide as a compass to best direct you to your own personal self-healing, self-exploration journey and intimacy. It's not a linear path. It's not easy work, but you are your best guide, not me and not anyone else. So if I say something that doesn't resonate, just let it go. If I say something that does, perhaps look at that in some self-reflection later. And always, if you need to do anything to take care of yourself, if you're feeling triggered in this conversation, do whatever you need to do. There's also some biasness that I will have just based off of my human body and this experience that I have on this human planet. So that will be part of the conversation. But I hope that we all can just, first suggestion, put our preconceptions aside, practice beginner's mind, and see what else can I learn and what else can I see and deepen my understanding around this topic. And so I have a short time with you today. I'm gonna try to cover as much as I can, but I really had to discern in what I think would be best for covering this topic. So I'm not gonna do this perfectly. I'm nervous. I've shot this a million times. Just sharing vulnerably where I'm at, time limited, feeling like I want to do this perfectly for you and I can't. And, that's okay because that's real intimacy. It's imperfect. Probably gonna stutter. And for those of you that are here and want to have fun and maybe decompressing from the week and not wanting to get into these like deep, vulnerable conversations in your drinking, I have a fun drinking game for you, which is anytime that I say like, whatever, or have an awkward silence, have a drink. And hopefully it's something that's not too high in alcohol content because I do all of those things a lot. All right, so let's see if I covered my intro stuff. Yeah, perfect. So the first thing that I'm going to invite you to join me in is an erotic embodiment breathwork conversation or exercise. And in this exercise, we're using 4 tools to help us be more embodied, which is really important in intimacy and as we're navigating this crazy world and seeing what feels true for us and what doesn't. So it helps with that internal compass stuff that I was mentioning earlier. So the 4 things we use are awareness. So just having, your awareness at a certain part if I'm directing you to it during the exercise. The breath, so I'm going to be teaching you a very particular kind of way of breathing that helps your nervous system to relax. This helps you to get more yummy nourishment from the experience, as well as helps you in intimacy, particularly with men. It can help with ejaculation control, either prolonging or helping you to increase arousal. Same with women, it helps to increase pleasure, just being more embodied and using the breath as a tool. Sound, so any whatever comes up in intimacy and also just in the daily life, like reclaiming our throat chakra. That's our God-given right. And also the throat's really connected to the pussy and cock. Or pixie stick, lollipop, mushroom, whatever you call your sex organs. I'm just going to use cock and pussy because that's normally what I use. And then the last thing is movement. So at the end, I'll invite in if you want to make any movements just to let some energy release. Also in intimacy, if like someone touches you and it like tickles, allow yourself to have that embodied response. All right, so you can have your eyes open or closed. I'm gonna have mine closed for most of it, and we can't really do this a right way, so whatever way you wanna do it. And if you wanna sit this out, no worries. And just start tuning into however your breath normally is. If you wanna have hands on you or not, it just helps me to be more in my own experience when I touch myself, but no worries if you don't want to. So taking a breath into the chest, and what we're looking for is a long, deep inhale and a really slow, controlled exhale. So breathing in. And slowly releasing the breath as if you have a balloon and you're just letting out a little bit of air. Beautiful. 2 more into the chest. Breathing in. Letting any stress or any shoulds or any to-dos just melt away with every part of your controlled exhale. Breathing in. Now allow the breath to travel down deeper into your stomach, breathing even more generously. Breathing in. 2 more, just like that. Beautiful. 1 more. Breathing in. Now allow the breath to travel down to your sex organs. I'll breathe into my pussy. You breathe into whatever you call your sex organs. Breathing in. This next breath, I want you to take all your attention, place it on your sex organs, and take a full inhale with that focused attention. See if that changes how that inhale feels. Breathing in. Beautiful. This last one, imagine as if your sex organs have a mouth. Breathe in as if you're breathing in through that mouth, and see if that allows the breath to travel deeper, the sensations to travel deeper. Breathing in. Inviting in any movement, if you want to, any shakes, anything on that last exhale, letting everything release, coming to a pause, allowing the breath to regulate itself. And just see if you notice any differences in your body without naming it in your head. And when you're feeling ready, open your eyes and join me back on the call. Thank you for those of you that followed along with that, and thank you for those that stuck around through it. Are you all ready for the body of this conversation? Beautiful. So why is this topic important? It's important for so many reasons. Our culture, what we're taught from our caretakers, to our teachers, to our peers, to what we see on TV, to what we see in movies, what everyone sort of starts to create what I call discourses, these belief systems around how things should operate. And these vary culture to culture. So some of these concepts might vary depending on if you grew up here or somewhere else. But typically, it's important to know that social media and media in general helps to create a framework of comparison of what is normal. And if that message that we're getting is really limited to what actually is, especially when it comes to intimacy and connection and sexuality, then there's a lot of space for feeling shame. And shame is one of the main things that makes us feel disembodied and disconnected in intimacy. So it's a huge issue. Also, online is one of the first places that many young people look to sort of have information around what sex and intimacy looks like, because it's such a taboo topic that nobody's teaching the kids, no one's teaching young people like what it is. So we're all sort of left to figure it out with trial and error on our own, instead of having some real humanness conversations and some tools for people to then experiment with. People are really having to like just trial and error. That can be really traumatizing. Interpersonal relationships are some of the most traumatizing wounds, and I argue, and I am biased, that they are the most traumatizing wounds. And so I think it's really important that we look at our usage and our relationship with social media and take responsibility for how we are contributing to said culture and what messages we're giving to kids these days. I also wanted to mention, I think it's really important that algorithms contribute, those in control of algorithms control much of what we are being fed and what we're being told is right and true. A lot of the messages of how we should feel about ourselves and our bodies, and really what we're looking at the screen is affecting fundamentally what we feel and believe about ourselves and about others and what's happening out there in the world. So this is a really potent and important topic. I'm going to give 3 examples, 1, 2, and 3 is what I'll reference to them later, around what I'm noticing a lot of and how these things are sort of reopening some core wounds that we were gifted with from our beautiful caretakers, who none of us are perfect. So, forever, even with the most pure intentioned best parents, best caretakers ever, will give us these beautiful wounds that we get to deal with, because we're all just trying to figure things out in these human bodies. So no shame to the parents. We love you. And thank God we have these wounds, because actually these hugely create our eroticism. So, and one of the speakers spoke about that last year at Lightning in a Bottle, and that's based off of The Erotic Mind by Jack Mohr. I believe that's his last name. I highly recommend that book. It's amazing. All right, so the 3 examples, and then after I give the examples, I'll tell you what wounds they are, and then I'll get into the wounds and how they're created, and then why it's important that we know this about ourselves. And then I'll get into like, what do we do from here now that we know these things about stuff. So the first example is this worship, hyper focus on these unrealistic standards of beautiful ass humans that look like gods and goddesses, that are largely paid advertisements, influencers that are there to perhaps make us feel a certain way about ourselves so that we can get sold stuff. And these humans are probably not strangers to Facetune and Photoshop and other forms of manipulating the way that they look in order to have a particular outcome. So that's example number 1 that I see a lot of on social media, particularly Instagram. And then the second one is largely what messages we got growing up in the 90s and maybe the early 2000s. A lot with rom-coms, telling us the story of like a white woman and a white man, they meet and fall in love, and they have their challenges, but they have great jobs and great careers and buy the house and have the dog and live happily ever after. So that's one of the messages that we got too. That's my second example. And then the third one is gifted to us. The most recent example I could think of that I see this in is a lot of reality TV shows. And I see these like beautiful people that have no or little emotional intelligence or ability to communicate what's really going on for them. And so they do some type of deception things, and it ends in catastrophe because they were too scared to share what's really coming up for them. So that's the third one. And if you guys want to take a guess at what the 3 wounds are, issues with it, happy to do it now if you guys want to do it. And yeah, so now I'll just jump into them, and I'm going to use my notes for this portion. So the first one that I did, which was the unrealistic beauty standards, that is the worth wound. And this happens around ages 5 to 7. And this happens when kids, like a natural need that we need developmentally is to know that we are worthy, but not for what we do or how we look or saying things in a certain way, but just for who we are without having to do anything. And this wound develops when kids are getting the message that they have to do or be or earn any type of love or affection, not that they are just inherently lovable. And this is obviously very damaging and actually a very popular wound in our culture. It's deeply seen in, with like movie stars and actors, actresses, singers, famous people essentially. And you can spot these humans because they're super hardworking, they're very productive. This is the perfectionist wound. High anxiety, so maybe an athlete or like someone that you're just, how do they have so much energy to do all that? You know, like, geez, I want to have whatever they're on or whatever. And this can be really hard to be in a relationship with someone like this. And I'll just speak on my experience. And also, full disclosure, now these 3 wounds are 3 of the 6 that I teach, and these are the 3 that I have. So I feel perhaps maybe this is just like I'm seeing it more because that's the shadowy part of me and the mirror reflected of social media. So I'll just be sharing about my experience, which is what I do in my coaching style. So people aren't feeling shame about like, oh my God, I think that's me. And you know, you're not alone. So many people, you know, don't feel shame about these parts of ourselves. Like most people have this. And so my worth wound comes out because I work a lot. So then I don't really have that much time or capacity for connection. And then like if I'm at all triggered or something happens, I can like get nasty and, you know, I can just, I work a lot. So that affects my relationships in that way. But largely my worth wound is tied to my abandonment issues. So even if a relationship, if we're both sort of feeling like this isn't the best alignment for both of us, let's, you know, transfer into some type of different relationship, I'll be like, oh no, what did I do wrong? Like, what can I do to be better for you to not leave, for you to stay? So it's that like I need to work and earn the ability for someone to stay around. And worth wound people can also be hard because like you'll be there saying like, I love you, like trying to give them love, but because they think that they have to earn it, it just doesn't land. So you're just like, why do I feel like this person isn't receiving me? And it's probably because they have a worth wound. All right, so the next one that I did, the number 2, which is the like, you know, the rom-com messages that we're getting around how intimacy in life should look, you know, our achievements, how they should look and what order they should be in. And that is the freedom wound, the unfree shame wound. And so it's important in human development for us to feel free to explore children, for children to feel free to explore our will and our self-expression and developing a sense of autonomy over ourselves, and like boundaries are huge here. So think boundary work. If you've you know have had any boundary work or seeing that you need boundary work, this might be you. And the wound is created when the child begins to sort of separate from what their caretakers like want them to do, and then the parents somehow interfere with their ability to self-express, with their life choices, maybe condemning them, threatening of ostracization, of not supporting anymore. So this can be like hyper controlling, really anxious parents. I know my parents always just wanted the best for me, and like the safest path is conforming to the culture and getting a corporate job. And if that resonates with you and you do this, like no shame at all. It's just didn't fit for me. Look at me, I'm here lightning in a bottle talking about sex, one of the most taboo topics, you know. So I just like felt the message that I got was like, I am bad, like who I am fundamentally, which does not fit into this culture. Like working my way up a corporate ladder makes me feel so depressed, I literally can't handle it. So that's one of the ways that you can sort of sense these unfree people, is the ones that are trying to conform even though they don't feel it, is they're like weight of the world on their shoulders. They feel a lot of shoulds in their system, a lot of have tos, and they're sort of like slow moving. They're also some of the most loyal friends and best people because when they commit to something, they do it. People that are healing this wound can be very indecisive because they're not good with boundaries. They never were given a chance to have autonomy and say in what they want to do. So those are some clues in which you can find the unfree people. It's hard to be with unfree people because, you know, often they're unsure of things that they want. So indecisiveness, and that can make it really hard to date someone like that, you know, that's like, I don't really know what I want to do, or like changes plans last minute, cancels last minute. Like that's all sort of the unfree wound. And then unfree people also like tend to overextend themselves as well if they're feeling like they have to conform to our culture, which has that unworthy thing sort of built in on the career side of things. And then the last one, number 3, which is the like reality TV show, people not sharing things vulnerably. So it's the invulnerable, vulnerable wound. And this is so damaging for a lot of reasons, but makes total sense why we have this wound, because on social media, we take peeks and it's like all these people being completely perfect and their lives look amazing. Of course, why would we ever share like what's actually going on for us, that we're in deep grief because of COVID or because, we went through this breakup? Like, why would we ever share that? Like, that's not going to get likes. And are likes even the best indicators of what's going on here? I digress. So the invulnerable wounds happens around age 4 to 5. And I'll just read a little bit from here. For most animals, the brain is largely focused on the simple task of survival. However, our large frontal cortex means that humans have the additional capacity for a self-aware psyche. Our self-awareness, as well as our survival level need for social acceptance, makes us uniquely vulnerable to the thoughts, actions, and feelings of others. And indeed, it is the ability to stay vulnerable that allows us to have the most deeply satisfying connection with others. The invulnerable character is one whose childhood is marked by humiliation, caused by very subtle to more extreme manipulation, abuse, gaslighting, or abandonment by those that they love. It's largely based in power. So this is the narcissistic wound. So usually the narcissistic wound is passed down from a narcissist, and that's how you get the wound. At least for me, that was my experience. And it's this like power dynamic, like narcissists like to make other people feel when they're triggered, and this happens at like level 10 trigger. And it's this like, you are inadequate, like you're weak, you're incompetent. It's this like, like keeping people down so that the person that's feeling humiliation can feel powerful. So the ways that you can see and notice narcissists in the world is they're like really charismatic, they're very magnetic, they light up a room, but they also have these things to make them perceived that they have power over you. So maybe they are like name dropping someone that they spent time with, or like all the famous people they know. Really narcissistic people are like, do you know me? Do you know who I am? And it's like, no, sir, I don't. I'm sorry. Making jokes. There's a lot of density around the word narcissist, and a lot of people have this, like, especially in our culture, this shame about it. But a lot of people in our culture are, like, many, especially young people, millennials, a lot of us are invulnerable because we have been told, especially through social media, that we can't have any imperfections, and people can use things with bullying and all these, like, especially online bullying, feeling humiliation and weak and not enoughness, and it's terrifying and terrible to feel. So all you people out there resonating with what I'm saying, I feel you. It's hard to be vulnerable, especially in intimacy, the most vulnerable place ever. But it's super important if we want to have like really juicy, delicious connections. And so when invulnerable people get triggered, they often become vindictive and mean and scary, and it's one of the most intense trigger wounded things. So that can obviously make it really difficult for people to be with us, because we can get really volatile, and that's really not okay and can be really traumatizing. So it's super important that we know these things about ourselves, and I'm getting into the next part of this conversation here, so that we can then start to work on it and communicate around our triggers, get to know ourselves intimately and what triggers us, and then communicate that with partners. So it's like, when you say things to me in this particular tone, it triggers my invulnerability and I get really nasty, so please, can we like do our best, with the capacity that we have, the awareness that we have for the day, to like not talk in this particular tone, because I am really worried I'm gonna get mean and nasty, and I really don't want to damage you or myself or this relationship, because I care about you and love you. So that was sort of like a quick example on why this is important. So we need to have the awareness around ourselves. Step one is having the awareness so that we can be then empowered to make conscious choice and change on trying to have conscious relationships where we can start healing these really deep wounds that will probably never be fully healed, but at least we can have enough awareness to then consciously communicate like, hey, this is what I look like when I'm getting kind of triggered with this wound, and this is what I need in those moments. And that's like really conscious relating. It's also really important so that you can cop to your shit. If you're in a relationship with someone and they are completely not taking accountability for the stuff that makes it difficult to be with them, it can be very frustrating to be with that person. On the other hand, if you're with someone and they're saying, yeah, oh God, I know that I can really get caught up in work and not really have enough time for our connection. And that must be really hard for you. Like, I know that you're wanting to deeply connect with me, and that must just really suck for you. So when someone's able to like say, yes, this is what makes it difficult to be with me, and empathize that I know that that's not so easy for you. And then maybe compromise, like, what is something that I can do that's like enough to feed into your anxious attachment with me that will make you feel better about our connection. So then like offering a way to compromise, like, hey, I know I have this thing, I'm working on improving it, but also what can I give you in those moments? And so I did a whole thing on my story on my Instagram, so go check that out. Just being aware of time here, and wanting to really get into, so now what? What do we do with all this information? So number one, I would love to, these are all suggestions, right? Look at your relationship with social media, both on content creation and content consumption, and really start to say, like, what is my intent with social media? What am I getting out of it? What do I want to do with it? And then start to witness, like, are these particular habits and behaviors serving me? Are they not serving me? Why do I use social media? Like, for those of us who have addictive tendencies, sometimes it can be like, stressed out about work, and it helps us to unwind. Just really starting to bring that mindfulness and awareness piece in, and then the intentionality piece in too. Like, why am I using this? And let's align our actions with that. I also want to invite in imperfection. So let's heal that worth wound. Let's use less filters or not Facetune, or share vulnerably in the comments, like how we are imperfect, how we are works in progress, and normalize imperfection, normalize a growth path, really giving some good content and context to a beautiful photo. If that feels too vulnerable for you to not use Facetune, which it is for me, then perhaps like then sharing more vulnerably in the context and the caption, something that then makes people feel more resonance, and not just like we have to sit here and pretend to be perfect and lacking in vulnerabilities. Also normalizing and sharing your story that, intimacy might look and be very different for you than many others. And I want to start to, wrap up with my last few minutes of some people that are really doing an amazing job with this, and sort of celebrating what social media is doing right. And so the first people that I want to shout out to is salty.world, and they are an online magazine, and they have an Instagram where they're helping to pass the mic to underrepresented people who have never had a chance to have their stories told. There's a lot of shadow banning, a lot of, putting the grasp on content of, trans, non-binary, queer, women, disabled people that are not having their stories out there. And this is so important, because having a wide variety of people's stories shown, especially through social media, which is what we have control over as individuals, that's not controlled by these big corporations, then that helps, queer people in the Midwest to not feel like they're so alone, because now they have access to other amazing stories of people who have been right there with them through all of the things that they're experiencing. So thank you, salty.world, for existing and for doing the work that you do. Please go check them out. What I'm saying is not doing justice at all. They have amazing individuals that they're, sharing the stories of. So please go look at them. The other two are like two of my favorites for mental health and some tools and tips. The holistic.psychologist, which many of you, I'm sure, follow Dr. Nicole LaPera. She's amazing, has a lot of great content also on YouTube. And then the brain coach, which is a student who's getting her PhD in psychology, I think neuropsychology. So she has a lot of like rewiring the neural brain, the neural pathways, which is like hugely what my work is based around in too. And then lastly, Here She Comes, which is a TV show that's gonna start being created here soon, about all the different ways that intimacy can look. I'm working a little bit with them here in the Bay Area, so thank God there will be some type of representation of the different types of ways relationships can look, different body types, different cock sizes, different, how you can have a healthy argument, like all of these different ways that people can really be de-shamified in their experience of intimacy. So I hope that this was helpful for some of y'all, that you got some great tips, tools, awareness, and that you're feeling some resonance. I would love to connect with you on Instagram. Again, my handle is at Jenny, JENNY_Mohr_. And I'm just so grateful. Thank you for Lightning in a Bottle for letting me share this amazing content. And I hope to see you all in the flesh next year, LIB 2021. I love you all.